hearing will be the next regular meeting.
So July 10th.
And if we are able to give you, just some of this missing data.
And we have to hear from the county.
Yeah. I think they meet later this month, I don't know if that's.
They'll meet on the 3rd.
If they do stuff.
So so you probably have to go to August after we meet in July then.
Well, is there any possibility for a vote in, after the public hearing, if we have everything
Yeah, if we hear from,
ready?
if we have all the information
If we have it.
from the county and,
Excellent.
Well, we'll make some phone calls.
I don't know.
If you're serving alcohol, so you're gonna get a license.
Yes, of course.
That's gonna have to be in,
Well, it's not possible to get a license before we have approval to run a food establishment.
see if you can get a commitment.
I'm sure we could try, but from when I've looked into it, a lot of people's decisions on a lot of things are actually weighing on disapproval. So it's kind of the cart before the horse a little bit. We can't really do too much until we get the approval from the county to do the project. But I'll do my best to get something for sure.
Actually, speaking to that, I think if you were to review the environmental this evening, that would help facilitate some of these, a couple of these, DEP and Department of Health. I think they were kind of waiting to hear from that too. So it seems like doing that tonight is very beneficial for the project and for the process.
Why are they waiting for us? They should be doing this, the DEP should be doing all the tests.
They-
This is just what I heard from
That
Gary.
is- That's usually given to us from them.
Yeah.
The DEP did come out, and the DOH with
They
our
tested the
engineer.
soil and everything.
They did there were a lot of tests out there.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and soon you'll be getting,
Sometimes it's hard to tell who's waiting for who in some cases,
Yeah.
so I'm just putting it out there as maybe a request, if that could be looked at this evening. How much time would that take?
I don't have any problems with it. It's up to the board.
Let's do it.
So it just helps facilitate some of the.
Do you guys all want a copy, a blank copy?
No.
No.
As long as Don's.
Don's got it.
Can I borrow mine back?
Don has
Oh, Don
yours.
has two, okay.
no,
Good to know.
Would you like a blank one?
Sure. I just,
Yeah, another question.
I'll just follow along. Thank you.
Oh, vote all over?
yeah, but it's mine. I'll give you yours.
Well, we need section 2. Do you have section 2?
I have section 2 here, yes. Can I just have that assessment when you're done, so I can put it in the file?
Which one?
The assessment we're doing right now.
This one, okay. All right.
Good enough?
All right. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations?
No.
Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
No. It's gonna have a farm, but that's a good thing. You're gonna go.
Small,
Yeah.
it's no or small impact or moderate to large
Right.
impact.
Yeah.
It's
No or
small,
small.
small impact, there is gonna be a change.
Is it an impact to go to become a farm?
It actually is I think that property was already zoned commercial agriculture, is that correct? I know you and I had exchanged a few emails many months back, Howie. I know you may not remember it because it was over the summer prior to us
Small
purchasing.
impact.
But it's actually 2 parcels and the 19 acres is actually already commercially, agriculturally zoned according to,
I don't think we had a commercial.
oh, okay.
I'm okay with
Or
small.
approved use maybe, was what you had mentioned?
Everybody good
Yeah,
with
yeah.
small?
I'm good with small.
Is it zoned agricultural?
There's no,
No, I meant a commercial agricultural use was
Yes, there is.
where is that?
Wait a minute,
Where-
I don't- agricultural property?
Oh, you can own agricultural property, yes, that exempts you from zoning regulations.
Yes,
Building codes.
I think the property at the Middle Rally is also, that is agricultural.
Well, that has a history of being
Across the street.
agricultural. You can grow things anywhere in the town.
Just to make an ag district, which it is.
We're good.
This line. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
No.
Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area?
No,
No.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway?
No.
Last one, the other one could affect the flood zone there, but we'll
This
know.
is about traffic though.
No, I'm
Yeah.
before
the
that.
one before that.
Oh.
But we'll get the answers from that when you have the elevation certificate, so.
So then just write that down, that we haven't gotten an elevation certificate yet.
Just
Change existing level of traffic.
No.
Which one
The
are
one
we?
before.
the one before.
Number
The
4.
critical environmental area.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Will the, traffic was good.
No, at number 6.
Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities?
No.
Will
Is that
the-
gonna increase your electric? The restaurant, you're not gonna bring in a 400 amp service or anything?
It won't be increased by all that much, honestly, because the only electric that we're gonna have is the large refrigerator in the garage, like in terms of
Okay, so
addition.
it's small impact.
Very
Yeah.
small,
I
yeah.
think, I mean, I think
Somebody
the,
Hudson likes the impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the energy code is gonna dictate a lot of that anyway.
So
So in the
small
building
impact.
code, yeah. Will the proposed action impact existing, A, public, private water supplies? You're drilling a well, public, private wastewater treatment utilities.
No.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
Nope.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
No. Not that we've heard.
Yeah, I thought one-
All the drives and parking are gravel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna percolate.
Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
No.
How's your food?
Might actually help even.
Just joking. Okay, do we have a motion to accept this as negative impact?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Should we add a notation about the way in the elevation certificate?
What was the motion?
And also the DEP, the health department, the septic as well. We're waiting for documentation on that one.
Just pending approval.
Right. Conditioned on the elevation certificate and the sign offs by the DEP and
And the health department.
health department.
Thanks.
The DEP, DOH.
Thank you all so much for your
Thank
time
you.
this evening, really appreciate it.
Sounds like it'll be nice.
Good luck.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
See you next month.
What time are we gonna do that?
Public hearing is at 6:45.
6:45.
So can I just add, because I can't hear you guys, so you accepted the preliminary environmental assessment contingent on hearing from the elevation certificate, DEP, and the
The health-
DOH?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, excellent. Yep.
Okay.
you all again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, where's mine? Good rest. Yeah.
Firelight, that's the
Yes.
Think about ferry service from the Firelight down to the river?
Bridge. Bridge, too much bridge.
Okay.
On the way.
Joe McCoy. Nelson.
Okay, Gales, Chair of the Dignity and Beautification Committee.
I'm going to assume that, let me say this and not just read along.
Everybody has a copy,
Okay,
yes.
I didn't know you would do that. Great, I appreciate it. As your little memo says, I am chairman of a committee called Dignity and Beautification. We've been in operation for about 12 years now. And I'm speaking to the planning board, to you, because I was instructed to do so by the town supervisor, Rob Stanley. He wanted that in order that you should be informed about our concerns. As a little background, I just want to say we really cherish living in this valley because of the spectacular beauty of the surrounding mountains, but also because this is a community that cares about one another. The memo says, and I'm not going to read it in detail because I know you can read, the kinds of things the beautification committee has done over 10 years to try to enhance the valley. All these efforts that are repeated year after year, whether it's mowing, watering, planting, were done by Alegria volunteer residents from beginning in Alegria. All the funds involved were raised by donations from those residents. But we have some problems that we feel only the town government can address. And we put up some pictures for you, and I'm also going to give you a packet of these pictures, but I only have one. I'm running out of photographing money. First of all, we're concerned about what we consider an illegal junkyard. This is now stuffed with 52 cars. At the board meeting last week, or after the board meeting, we were told that it still is a registered service station. That may be, but he's taken down the sign that says he's a New York State registered service station. What it is, it was a temporary towing service with temporary storage, but it has become a permanent home for wrecks. Okay, and we have 52 of them stuffed in this little lot. Now, you know far better than I do, we have zoning laws in the town that apply to junkyards. And you're much more familiar with the code than I am, but I would just cite sections like 83.2, 83.3, 83.4, 83.12. They say things like, if you're gonna have a junkyard, you gotta be licensed. This is not. They say that it needs to have an 8-foot fence, set back 50 feet, 25 feet from adjoining property. Of course, it doesn't. Particular note, sections 116.10 specifies that unenclosed storage of junk cars, car parts, and other materials is prohibited in all zones. Doesn't matter if it's residential or business. The 52 wrecks that are stuffed on this lot are leaking hazardous materials. And frankly, people have said to us, let's just go to the DEP. We don't want to do that. The man who owns this property is a friend and a neighbor and a really great person, and we're not trying to get him in trouble. But we are concerned. There's hazardous materials, they attract rodents, it presents a fire hazard, and it's an eyesore. And this eyesore diminishes neighbors' property values. Not to mention that it's a huge impact as you drive into town, and the first thing you see is a wide open junkyard. I'm also concerned about two other sites, and I said frankly our level of concern is not as high on those, but we're mentioning them because they're all businesses, and we're frankly starting with businesses. We know there are residences in our community that deserve our concern, that are not taken care of. But we start with the businesses. There's a former store that was stripped to the studs and left to rot. This place is what insurance companies call an attractive nuisance. It just invites vandalism. The building permit is no longer posted. And when I mentioned this at the June 3rd town board meeting, Ian was there, the owner, Ian Cruikshank, and said, oh, there is still a valid permit, and we'd be going soon before you to renew that permit. He also said, I'm going to address it right away. I'm concerned too. And he has done something, I'll give him. He's boarded up the side and the front, but the whole back is still wide open. So it's still an attractive nuisance. Our hope is that when he comes before the planning board for his renewed permit, that you'll stipulate that more significant things need to happen than just what's been done so far. And then, of course, our last concern is this tent city. It's become a permanent yard sale, operates on a year-round basis, now is selling a car and a boat. It's my understanding this is an illegal business in a residential zone, and that's the key, the residential zone.
Is this the one on 28?
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta told us where to go.
Yeah,
Yes.
We won't listen to us.
Okay.
Yeah, and I understand you've had to deal with him, and it hasn't been easy. I also understand it's getting to a legal process. Frankly, I'm glad to hear that, because it's creating a traffic hazard with multiple cars that park illegally on the highway shoulder, and it's still in the residential zone. So we have existing laws, zoning regulations, but they're not being enforced. And that is not the fault of the code enforcement officer. We believe it's the fault of not having, on the leadership level, the will to enact the laws that exist. Okay, there have to be consequences for ignoring laws, for creating hazardous highway conditions, for diminishing your neighbor's property values, for destroying what's labeled a scenic byway. One of the pictures, what you see first is a little sign, scenic byway, and then we see the junk cars. I have a slightly different message than what I gave to the town board, because we've been thinking about it a lot. We were assured at the town board that there'd been meetings with Howie and Chuck and Rob, and they had a plan, and by July 16th, no, I think it's June 16th, sorry, he's going to make progress, and if not, they'll start imposing fines. Frankly, that's the system that's been in place all the while. I know Tut worked on it all the while. It gets to the point where they say, we're going to impose fine, and the property owner says, I'm working on it. I'm going to do something. Give me some time. And the town says, well, if you're working on it, we're not going to impose a fine. It's not a system that's working. We'd like to suggest that you convene a meeting with the following individuals. Howie McGowan, of course, the code enforcement officer, Chuck Perez, the property owner, Bob Stanley, our supervisor. And we'd like to ask that you consider including John Michelotti, who's here today, if you want to talk to him, who represents Beginning Beautification. At this meeting, this is what we'd like to see happen. We would like to create a mutually agreed upon specific plan, not just a promise I'm going to get to. This plan will set measurable goals, with concrete deadlines. Eh, I'm not here to tell you what the plan should be. Those people should work it out. It would require quantifiable results. You know, if you set a date, by August 1st, X number of cars are going to be gone. Out of 52, maybe 10. Okay, then by September 1, 10 more. Then there needs to be in the plan the detail that financial consequences will begin if they fail to meet the plan's deadlines, the deadlines he agreed on. Right now, all we need is a promise. I'm going to work on it. Chuck sat in my living room a year ago and said, within the month, Marty, I'm going to have it cleaned up. 13 months went by. It's not cleaned up, it's worse. It's not our intention to cause financial hardship. We have the utmost respect for Chuck, but personal appeals and well-intentioned promises to clean it up have failed. We're working without a plan that says it's okay to promise, but we need to know specifically when something will be done. And I'm not saying he has to commit to all 52 cars gone by August 1st. I'm just saying a plan to work it out. Folks in town, in my hamlet in particular, have run out of patience. I submit to you, along with a copy of the pictures, a petition that was signed by 52 residents of Shandaken, urging the town to enforce the law. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. My chair.
Marty,
Yes.
I think we all agree with you, but this board has no authority to do that.
I understand. I really do. And we didn't come to you first. We only came to you because Rob said, you should go to them. You should go to the zoning board, you should go to the planning board. I want to be able to go back to Rob and say, I did what you asked me to do. I went to all those boards and listened patiently. He did mention that Port Howie, and I have sympathy for you, reports to you, 7 people, to the zoning board, 5 more people, to the town board, 5 more people. That's 17 bosses. You don't need another
We're
one.
not his boss.
We're not his boss.
Well, that's what the impression was of his statements, Rob's statements. Now, maybe he misstated it, but
All of your questions that you just proposed to us are now existing in the code. There's penalties, there's time limits,
Yeah.
there's enforcement procedures. They're all there.
yes, but we have to have the will to enforce it. And what happens is somebody makes a promise, oh, I'm working on it, you know, and then it goes away, and it may or may not get resolved. I mean, Ian's made a step, so we can all say he's working on it. But I'm going to be back at the town board July 1, and if he hasn't closed the back too, I'm going to be complaining. You know, basically we're saying to them, because they are elected by people who live in this community, that we're not going away. This has gone on way too long, and it's got to be fixed. I can't tell you, somebody went to visit a doctor in Kingston, a friend of mine went yesterday, and they said, where are you from? They said, Big Inland. They said, oh, it's so sad. What Big Inland looks like? I said, somebody doesn't even live out here. They drive out here and they remember how it used to look, and they say,
How long ago did you have the meeting with Mr. Perez? You said
it
he
was
saw-
the beginning of May in 2018. And in January, I wrote a letter and said, if there's no progress, Chuck, I'm going public.
I spoke to him about this already, the day before yesterday. And he told me that he was going to start doing it.
John, he's visits, one of the reasons we wanted John on that little committee is he's good buddies with Chuck. And Chuck spoke to John the other day and said, I'm gonna work on it. And
Well,
John said,
I'm sure you're aware of it, that he's gone through some issues with his dad passing away, and there's been some serious things that take a little time. And I'm not taking sides here at all. But
and we're not heartless. We understand life is complicated.
This is really not about Chuck Perez. This is about enforcing the laws of our town. This is about the other junkyards that exist. Okay, what are we doing about the junkyard in Pine Hill? There's a tremendous junkyard in Pine Hill.
Which one are you referring to?
There's a hotel, I don't know who owns the building, and in back of the
Yeah,
hotel
he's been
there's a
served.
junkyard.
He's been served with that appearance.
Okay, so that, this is not directed at you personally. This is directed against the code enforcement
No,
officer.
I'm glad that Marty came out. So
Okay.
this is what I've been waiting for in this
How
town.
many
I don't want to feel like
appearance
a lone
tickets have you
ranger out
issued?
there.
How many appearance tickets have you issued in the last 6 months?
Okay, yes, 4, but I also want to say that no previous code enforcement officer in this town has ever, what we've seen, issued an appearance ticket.
Well, this is a big problem, then, because
Yes.
we sit on the board and we make people who come before the board jump through the hoops, do everything, spend a lot of money for surveys and everything else. But if someone doesn't come to us, nothing is done. So someone can actually go build a hotel if they want, or a restaurant, without coming to the board, and we sit here and we can't do anything.
I agree with you 100%.
So why aren't people fined?
That's up to a judge.
No, it's not. It doesn't say that.
No, it is. It is up to the judge.
Well, let me tell you, I own property in Highland, New York.
I don't have the authority
I
to
understand.
fine people.
Well, it says in there that you do.
No,
It says
I
in our
have
code.
the authority to
enforcement
issue a
officer.
ticket.
Right, okay, that's what I mean. What's a
Yes.
ticket mean? Does it have a dollar amount in it?
No, it goes before a judge.
This is
And the judge finds it, so then we should be issuing,
Now, if, I can just say that, I just became an official New York State code enforcement officer on last week. So that gives me the accreditation that I can actually issue a ticket that will hold up in court. Sandy and I have been working since April with the town